The bridge of the Zephyrian battlecruiser Dominion's Edge hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-oiled war machine. Admiral Kethvar stood before the massive viewport, his forearms clasped behind his chitinous back as he gazed upon the human colony world of New Geneva spinning slowly below. The planet's blue oceans and green continents reminded him of the old stories about Earth, though this world was smaller, more fragile. "Admiral," came the voice of his tactical officer, "the human defense fleet has taken position around their orbital stations. 17 vessels total, mostly civilian ships with retrofitted weapons." Kethvar's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. 17 ships against our war fleet of 200. These humans either possess courage beyond reason or stupidity beyond measure. The Zephyrian Empire had been expanding for 3 centuries, consuming world after world with methodical precision. Their technology was superior, their numbers vast, their military doctrine proven across 1,000 conquered systems. The humans had been spacefaring for barely 200 years, and their scattered colonies were poorly defended. "This should have been another routine conquest, sir. We're receiving a transmission from the human flagship," reported the communications officer. "Put it through," Kethvar commanded, settling into his command throne. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a human female in a crisp blue uniform. Her hair was steel gray, her eyes the color of winter storms, and her bearing spoke of decades spent in command. The translation protocols identified her as Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of the New Geneva Defense Force. "Admiral Kethvar," she said, her voice steady despite the impossible odds she faced. "I am Admiral Chen. I assume you're here to offer us terms of surrender." Kethvar's mandibles spread wider.
"Indeed, Admiral Chen. Your reputation precedes you."
Former Earth Navy, veteran of the Proxima campaign, awarded the Solar Cross for valor. Impressive credentials for someone about to oversee the fall of her world. "I've read your file too, Kethvar. Butcher of Altair 7. Conqueror of the Vegan Confederacy. You've turned genocide into an art form." Chen's expression remained neutral, but steel edged her words. "So let's dispense with pleasantries. What are your terms?" "Unconditional surrender. Your military forces will be disarmed and disbanded. Your population will be relocated to designated sectors for integration into the Empire. Your world's resources will be allocated according to imperial decree. Compliance will ensure minimal casualties." Chen was quiet for a moment, and Kethvar thought he saw something flicker across her features. Not fear, he was well acquainted with fear. This was something else. Something that made his tactical instincts suddenly alert. "I see," she said finally. "And if we refuse? Then we will demonstrate why the Empire has never failed to claim a world it desires. Your people will suffer greatly, Admiral. I take no pleasure in unnecessary death, but I will not hesitate to order it." Chen nodded slowly as if she had expected this answer. "Admiral Kethvar, I need to ask you something. In all your conquests, all your victories against inferior species, have you ever encountered humans in actual combat?" The question caught Kethvar off guard. "Your species has been careful to avoid direct military confrontation with the Empire. Wise considering the disparity in our forces." "That's not an answer," Chen pressed. "Have you ever actually fought humans?" "No," Kethvar admitted. "But I have studied your military capabilities extensively. Your technology is decades behind ours. Your ships are slower, your weapons less powerful, your armor inadequate. I fail to see how this is relevant." Chen's smile was thin and cold. "It's relevant because you're about to learn something about my species that your intelligence reports missed. Something we've been very careful not to demonstrate until absolutely necessary. And what might that be? When humans are cornered, when we're facing extinction, when everything we love is threatened." Chen paused, her eyes seeming to look through him rather than at him. "We stop being rational. We stop calculating odds. We stop caring about our own survival." Kethvar felt an uncomfortable shift in his thorax, the Zephyrian equivalent of unease. "Admiral, surely you cannot believe that courage alone will—" "We become something else entirely," Chen continued, cutting him off. "Something that your perfectly logical, strategically sound military doctrine has never prepared you for. We become monsters, Admiral. Beautiful, terrible monsters." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence. Kethvar stared at the blank display for several seconds before turning to his tactical officer. "Analysis? Psychological warfare, sir. An attempt to unsettle us before the battle." Standard inferior force tactics, but Kethavar wasn't convinced. There had been something in Chen's voice, in her eyes. Something that spoke of knowledge he didn't possess. He activated his command console and began pulling up intelligence files on human military history. What he found made his blood run cold. The Siege of Stalingrad. The Battle of Thermopylae. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Iwo Jima. The Alamo. Page after page of humans fighting against impossible odds, choosing death over surrender, turning defeat into legend. His analyst had dismissed these as primitive tribal behaviors, irrelevant to modern warfare. They had been wrong. "Sir?" His sensor operator called out, interrupting his research. "The human fleet is moving. They're not taking defensive positions around the orbital platforms." Kethavar's attention snapped back to the tactical display. The 17 human ships were indeed moving, but not in any pattern his computers recognized. They weren't forming a defensive screen or attempting to flee. Instead, they were spreading out, positioning themselves seemingly at random throughout the system. "What are they doing?" he muttered. "Unknown, sir. Their formation makes no tactical sense. They're leaving their orbital defenses completely vulnerable." Kethavar studied the display, his unease growing. In 3 centuries of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. Every species they had encountered had followed predictable patterns. Either they fought defensively, trying to protect their assets, or they fled, hoping to escape destruction. None had ever simply scattered. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're picking up transmissions between the human vessels, coded, but our algorithms are working on decryption. Put it through the moment you have anything." Minutes passed. The human ships continued their strange dance, moving further apart with each passing moment. Kethavar found himself checking and rechecking his sensors, certain there had to be some hidden strategy, some concealed weapons platform or cloaked fleet waiting to spring a trap. There was nothing, just 17 outdated human ships spreading across the vastness of space like seeds on the wind. "Sir," the communications officer said, excitement in his voice, "we've broken their encryption. You need to hear this." The speaker crackled to life, filled with human voices speaking in calm professional tones that sent ice through Kethavar's veins. "Angel of Death to all units. Target acquired. Beginning final approach. Copy, Angel of Death, Reaper Squadron standing by. Harbinger acknowledging. Weapons hot. See you on the other side. This is Banshee. It's been an honor serving with you all." The transmission cut to static and the bridge fell silent once more. Kethavar stared at the tactical display, watching those 17 scattered ships continue their inexplicable movement pattern. Angel of Death, Reaper Squadron, Harbinger, Banshee. These weren't ship designations. They were call signs. And no military in the galaxy gave their vessels call signs like that unless they never expected those ships to come home. Aboard the human vessel Retribution, Captain Marcus Torres watched his tactical display with the detached calm of a man who had already made peace with death. The ship around him hummed with barely contained energy as his crew made final preparations for what they all knew would be their last mission. Captain, his executive officer, Commander Lisa Park approached his command chair. "Engineering reports all systems nominal. We're showing green across the board." Torres nodded, his weathered hands steady on the armrests of his chair. At 53, he had spent more than half his life in space, fighting pirates, exploring uncharted systems, and defending human colonies from raiders. He had never imagined it would end like this. "Any word from the other ships?" "All 17 vessels report ready, sir. The Angel of Death is maintaining her position at .77 Alpha. Captain Rodriguez sends her compliments and says to tell you that Maria's birthday cake recipe is in her personal files. She wants you to make sure her daughter gets it." Torres felt his throat tighten. Carmen Rodriguez had been his friend for 20 years, had served as his first officer before getting her own command. In 6 hours she would be dead, along with everyone else in the fleet. They all knew it. They had all accepted it, but they would not die quietly. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving updates from Planetary Defense Command. They've successfully evacuated the primary population centers. Approximately 4.7 million civilians are now in the mountain shelters. And the rest? Still evacuating, sir. They need another 18 hours minimum." Torres closed his eyes briefly. 18 hours. They had to buy New Geneva 18 hours against a Zephyrian fleet, that could reduce the planet to ash in less than 2. The mathematics were stark and unforgiving, but mathematics had never stopped humans before. Very well. Signal all ships. Execute Protocol 7. Protocol 7. Even the name sounded innocuous, like some routine training exercise. In reality, it was humanity's most closely guarded secret, developed in the deepest black sites of Earth's military research facilities and shared only with a handful of colonial commanders. It was the protocol that Admiral Chen had referenced when she spoke of humans becoming monsters. "Sir," Commander Park said quietly, "are you certain about this? We could still attempt a fighting retreat. Try to buy time with conventional tactics." Torres turned to look at her, this brilliant young woman who had turned down a cushy assignment on Earth to serve on the frontier. "Lisa, what's the Zephyrian doctrine for planetary conquest?" "They establish orbital superiority, destroy military infrastructure, then begin systematic bombardment of population centers until surrender is achieved." "And if surrender doesn't come?" "They keep bombing until there's nothing left to surrender." "Exactly. Conventional tactics won't work here. They have 200 ships to our 17. Their technology is superior in every measurable way. If we fight them ship to ship, we'll be dead in minutes and the planet will still be doomed." Park was quiet for a moment. "So instead we remind them that humans don't always fight rationally. Sometimes we fight like the monsters evolution made us." The bridge crew worked in focused silence as the Retribution adjusted course toward the Zephyrian fleet. Around them, the other 16 human ships did the same, each following a carefully calculated trajectory that would bring them into contact with the enemy formation at precisely the same moment. Torres pulled up the tactical analysis on his personal display, reviewing the plan one more time. The Zephyrians were arrayed in a standard conquest formation, heavy battleships at the center, cruisers forming a defensive screen, smaller vessels spread throughout to provide reconnaissance and fire support. It was a formation designed to maximize firepower while minimizing vulnerability, refined through centuries of successful campaigns. It was also a formation that had never encountered a species willing to turn their own ships into weapons. "Captain," the sensor operator reported, "the Zephyrian fleet is adjusting position. It looks like they're preparing to advance on the orbital platforms. Let them come. The further they commit to their attack run, the better our chances of success." Torres activated the ship-wide communication system. "This is the captain speaking. In approximately 5 hours, we will engage the Zephyrian fleet in what will likely be the final battle for New Geneva. I want you all to know that it has been my privilege to serve with each and every one of you. You are the finest crew I have ever commanded, and I am proud to call you my friends." He paused, looking around the bridge at faces he had come to know as well as family. "We all know what we're about to do. We've all seen the projections, run the simulations. This isn't about victory in any conventional sense. This is about making sure that when the Zephyrians think about conquering human worlds in the future, they remember what happened here. This is about making them afraid." The crew remained at their stations, focused on their duties, but Torres could see the set of their shoulders, the determination in their movements. These were volunteers, every one of them. They could have evacuated with the civilians, could have taken their families and fled to safety in the outer colonies. Instead, they had chosen to stay. They had chosen to become humanity's fangs. "Sir," the navigation officer called out, "we're approaching the outer marker. The Zephyrian scouts will detect us soon." "Good. Let them see us coming. Let them think they understand what we're doing." The Retribution shuddered slightly as her engines increased power. Around her, the other human ships matched her acceleration. 17 vessels racing toward a fleet 10 times their size with what appeared to be suicidal bravado. But appearances could be deceiving. Torres pulled up the engineering schematics on his screen, focusing on the modifications that had been made to every ship in the fleet over the past week. From the outside, they looked like standard civilian vessels with military retrofits, upgraded weapons, reinforced armor, improved shields. Nothing that would concern a Zephyrian admiral. What the sensors couldn't detect were the changes made to the fusion reactors. Every human ship now carried a modified reactor core. Its containment systems altered in ways that would have horrified any safety inspector. The modifications were subtle, disguised as routine maintenance, but they served a singular purpose: to turn each vessel into a devastating bomb when the containment fields were deliberately collapsed. It was insane. It was barbaric. It was exactly the kind of thing that no rational military strategist would ever consider. It was perfectly human. Captain Rodriguez is signaling, the communications officer reported. The Angel of Death is beginning her final approach. Torres watched the tactical display as the lead ship broke formation, accelerating directly toward the center of the Zephyrian fleet. The enemy responded exactly as predicted, concentrating their fire on what they assumed was a desperate ramming attempt by a single ship. They had no idea what was really coming for them. "All ships," Torres announced over the fleet channel. "This is retribution. Execute on my mark. It's been an honor flying with you all." The replies came back one by one, calm voices acknowledging what would be their final orders. No fear, no hesitation. Just 17 crews of humans doing what humans had always done when their backs were against the wall. They fought like devils and died like heroes. "Mark," Torres said quietly, and 17 ships became 17 suns, burning bright against the darkness of space. The first explosion tore through the Zephyrian formation like a miniature star going supernova. Admiral Cathavar watched in stunned disbelief as the human ship Angel of Death simply ceased to exist, replaced by a sphere of nuclear fire that expanded outward at a significant fraction of light speed. "Impossible," he breathed, his forearms gripping the command throne as the shockwave reached his flagship. The Angel of Death had taken 3 Zephyrian cruisers with her, their hulls simply vaporizing in the face of energies that no ship-mounted weapon should have been able to produce. But before Cathavar could fully process what he had witnessed, the second explosion erupted, then the third, then the fourth. 17 human ships. 17 nuclear detonations, each one perfectly timed and positioned to maximize damage to the Zephyrian fleet. "Damage report," Cathavar roared as his ship bucked and rolled from the overlapping pressure waves. 47 ships destroyed, his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. 23 more with critical damage. "The entire port formation is gone, sir. They're just gone." Cathavar stared at the tactical display, watching red icons disappear from his fleet roster one by one. In less than 30 seconds, the humans had destroyed a quarter of his forces. Not damaged, not disabled, completely annihilated. And they had done it by turning their own ships into weapons of mass destruction. "How?" he demanded. "How did they generate that much energy?" "Preliminary analysis suggests they overloaded their fusion reactors, sir. Deliberately collapsed the magnetic containment. Each ship essentially became a thermonuclear device." The implications hit Cathavar like a physical blow. These humans hadn't been trying to fight his fleet in any conventional sense. They had turned themselves into living bombs, sacrificing their lives not for victory, but simply to inflict maximum casualties on their enemies. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet. Put it through." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the holographic display once again, but now Cathavar saw her with different eyes. This wasn't just a military commander. This was something far more dangerous. This was a human being with nothing left to lose. "Admiral Cathavar," she said, her voice as calm as if she were discussing the weather. "I trust that got your attention. You sacrificed 17 ships," Cathavar said, struggling to keep the shock from his voice. "Hundreds of your own people." "I sacrificed volunteers," Chen corrected. "Every one of them knew what they were signing up for. Every one of them chose to be here rather than evacuating with their families. And Admiral, those 17 ships just bought me something more valuable than victory." "And what might that be?" Chen's smile was cold as winter on a dead world. "Time to show you what humans do when you threaten our children." The transmission ended, and Cathavar found himself staring at a tactical situation unlike anything in his 3 centuries of military experience. His fleet was wounded but still vastly superior to anything the humans could field. He still held orbital superiority. He could still complete his mission, but the mathematics had changed. Where before he had been conducting a routine conquest, now he was facing an enemy that fought by completely different rules. An enemy that would turn their own ships into weapons, sacrifice their own lives without hesitation, and do it all with the calm professionalism of a military that had been preparing for this moment since humanity first looked up at the stars. "Admiral," his chief of staff approached the command throne. "Sir, recommend we proceed with the bombardment. The remaining human defenses cannot stop us." Cathavar studied the display, considering his options. His staff was right. The human orbital platforms were lightly defended, their remaining ships few in number. He could complete the conquest of New Geneva within hours, but something nagged at him. Some instinct honed by centuries of warfare was screaming warnings that he couldn't quite identify. "What do we know about human evacuation procedures?" he asked. "Sir?" The humans evacuated their population centers before the battle. "Where did they go?" His intelligence officer pulled up the relevant files. "Underground shelters in the mountain ranges, sir. Standard procedure for worlds facing orbital bombardment. The terrain makes precise targeting difficult, and the rock provides natural shielding." "How many people?" "Approximately 4.7 million civilians." Kethvar nodded, his unease growing. Standard doctrine called for him to begin bombardment of military targets, then move on to infrastructure and finally population centers. The humans in those mountain shelters would be safe for weeks, possibly months, which meant Chen wasn't trying to save them from immediate death. She was buying time for something else. "Sir," the sensor operator called out. "Detecting energy signatures from the planet's surface. Multiple locations, all in the mountain regions. Specify." "Unknown, sir. The energy patterns don't match any known human technology in our databases." Kethvar felt ice form in his stomach. "Show me." The tactical display shifted to show New Geneva's surface, highlighting dozens of locations throughout the mountain ranges, where strange energy readings were emanating from underground installations. The patterns were unfamiliar, unlike anything in the Zephyrian technological database. "How long have those installations been there?" "Unknown, sir. Our pre-invasion scans focused on military and industrial targets. These locations were dismissed as natural geological formations. Get me a detailed analysis. I want to know what's generating those energy signatures." But even as he gave the order, Kethvar suspected he already knew the answer. The humans hadn't just been evacuating their civilians to those mountain shelters. They had been preparing for something. Something that required months or possibly years of secret construction, hidden from Zephyrian intelligence by the simple expedient of building it underground where orbital sensors couldn't penetrate. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "analysis complete. The energy signatures are consistent with large-scale industrial fabrication." "Sir, they're building something down there." "What kind of something?" "Unknown. But the power requirements suggest massive construction projects. The energy output from some of these sites exceeds anything our intelligence reports suggested the humans were capable of." Kethvar realized with growing horror that he had walked into a trap. Not a military trap, those he could understand and counter. This was something far more insidious. The humans had used their apparent weakness as camouflage, allowing the Zephyrian Empire to believe that New Geneva was just another lightly defended colony world, ready for conquest. Instead, it was a fortress world. A world that had been preparing for invasion for years, perhaps decades. A world that had just demonstrated its willingness to sacrifice anything and everything to protect what lay hidden in those mountains. "Sir," the communications officer said, his voice tight with tension, "we're receiving another transmission from Admiral Chen." "Put it through." Chen appeared on the display once more, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her, Kethvar could see what appeared to be a vast underground complex, its walls lined with machinery he didn't recognize. Hundreds of humans moved purposefully through the background, operating equipment that hummed with barely contained power. "Admiral Kethvar," Chen said, "I imagine you're wondering what we've been building down here while your intelligence services were mapping our obsolete surface installations." Kethvar said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. "We've been preparing for this day since humanity first learned of the Zephyrian Empire. We've been building weapons, Admiral. Not ships or orbital platforms or any of the things your scouts would look for. We've been building weapons specifically designed to kill your kind." She gestured to something off camera, and the view shifted to show an enormous construct, something that looked like a cross between a particle accelerator and a weapon of mass destruction. Similar devices stretched away into the distance, dozens of them, all pointing upward toward hidden exits in the mountain peaks. "You see, Admiral, we studied your species very carefully. We know exactly how your ships are constructed, what materials you use, what frequencies disrupt your technology. We've spent 20 years developing weapons that exploit every weakness in Zephyrian engineering." Kethvar's blood ran cold. "Those are surface-to-orbit weapons." "Oh, they're much more than that," Chen replied. "These are extinction devices, Admiral. Weapons that will reach out and touch your ships regardless of altitude or orbital position. Weapons that will teach the Zephyrian Empire that some worlds are simply too dangerous to conquer. The display showed more angles of the underground complex, revealing the true scope of what the humans had built. Not just weapons, but factories. Not just factories, but entire industrial complexes dedicated to a single purpose, making any invasion of New Geneva so costly that even the mighty Zephyrian Empire would think twice before attempting it. You have one opportunity to withdraw, Chen continued. Take your remaining ships and leave this system. Tell your superiors that New Geneva is not worth the cost. Because, Admiral, if you choose to continue this invasion, I guarantee you that none of your ships will leave this system intact. The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar alone with a choice that would define not just his career, but possibly the future of the war between humans and Zephyrians. He could order the bombardment to begin. His fleet still outnumbered whatever weapons the humans had constructed. The mathematics of orbital warfare still favored him, but the mathematics no longer seemed as certain as they had an hour ago. Deep within Mount Meridian, Admiral Sarah Chen stood before a holographic display that showed the exact position of every Zephyrian ship in orbit above New Geneva. The underground command center hummed with activity as hundreds of technicians made final preparations for what they all hoped would never be necessary. Admiral, Dr. Elizabeth Reyes approached, her lab coat stained with the grease and grime of 20 years spent building humanity's most terrible weapons. Project Prometheus is fully operational. All 17 installations are reporting green status. Chen nodded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. And Project Damocles? 97% completion. We need another 6 hours to bring the final arrays online, but the primary systems are ready. 6 hours. Chen looked at the Zephyrian fleet positioning themselves for bombardment and wondered if they had 6 minutes, let alone 6 hours. The alien admiral was taking his time, probably analyzing the energy signatures from the mountain installations, trying to determine what the humans had built in the years since first contact with the Empire. She hoped he was very, very worried. Ma'am, Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison, her tactical officer, pulled up additional displays. The Zephyrians are repositioning. Looks like they're preparing for a cautious approach. They're not taking the bait. Chen studied the fleet movements. Admiral Kethvar was no fool. His reputation hadn't been built on reckless charges into unknown situations. He was probably running every scan his ships could manage, trying to pierce the mountain's natural shielding to see what lay beneath. Smart man, she murmured, but not smart enough. The truth was that Project Prometheus, impressive as it looked, was largely a deception. The 17 installations were real and they were weapons, but they weren't the planet-killing devices she had implied. They were powerful, yes, capable of punching through even Zephyrian shields and armor, but they were also limited in number and range. The real weapon was something the Zephyrians couldn't see, couldn't scan, and couldn't prepare for because they fundamentally misunderstood the nature of human warfare. Colonel Morrison, Chen said, bring up the deep sensor array. I want to see what our friends upstairs are really doing. The display shifted to show a three-dimensional map of local space, with the Zephyrian fleet clearly marked. But now additional information overlay the tactical picture. Heat signatures, energy outputs, communication patterns. Data gathered by sensors the Zephyrians didn't know existed, hidden throughout the system for decades. They're running deep scans, Morrison reported, trying to penetrate the mountain shielding. And Admiral, they're not limiting themselves to New Geneva. They're scanning the entire system. Good, let them look. What the Zephyrians would find if they looked hard enough were the traces of humanity's real secret. Not hidden weapons or underground factories, but something far more dangerous. Evidence of human expansion into every corner of the New Geneva system. The asteroid belt showed signs of extensive mining operations that had been carefully hidden from casual observation. The outer planets displayed energy signatures consistent with massive industrial development. Even the system's comets had been harvested for raw materials. New Geneva hadn't been hiding weapons. It had been building a civilization. Ma'am? Dr. Reyes returned to Chen's side, her expression grim. We're receiving telemetry from the outer system installations. The Zephyrians have detected them. Chen allowed herself a small smile. How are they reacting? Confusion, mostly. Their analysts are trying to figure out how we could have built so much infrastructure without their intelligence services detecting it? The answer, of course, was time and patience. While the Zephyrian Empire had been focused on conquering worlds with existing civilizations, humanity had been quietly expanding into systems that appeared barren and worthless. Systems like New Geneva, with its small population and limited surface development. What the aliens hadn't realized was that humans didn't need to live on planets to thrive. They could build cities in asteroid belts, factories on moons, shipyards in the empty space between worlds, and they could do it all while maintaining the illusion that they were just another primitive species struggling to establish a foothold among the stars. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Kethvar." "Put him through." The Zephyrian admiral appeared on the display, and Chen could see the uncertainty in his alien features. Good. Uncertainty led to hesitation, and hesitation could be exploited. "Admiral Chen," Kethvar said, "my analysts have completed their assessment of your system's infrastructure. What we have discovered is unexpected." "I imagine it would be," Chen replied calmly. "Your intelligence reports probably listed New Geneva as a minor agricultural colony with limited strategic value." "Indeed. They appear to have been somewhat inaccurate." Chen laughed, the sound echoing through the command center. "Admiral, your intelligence reports weren't inaccurate. They were fiction. We've been feeding your spy networks carefully crafted lies for 20 years. Everything you think you know about human capabilities, human expansion, human technology, it's all been designed to make you underestimate us." She gestured to the displays around her, showing the true scope of human development in the New Geneva system. "This isn't just a colony world, Admiral. This is a fully integrated industrial complex capable of producing everything from farming equipment to warships. And it's one of 47 such systems throughout human space." The lie came easily. There weren't 47 systems like New Geneva. There were only 12. But Kethvar didn't know that, and the bluff might buy her precious time. "You're claiming that humanity has been deliberately concealing its true capabilities?" Kethvar asked. "I'm claiming that humanity has been playing a very long game, Admiral. We've been preparing for war with your empire since the day we learned you existed. Every human world you think you've cataloged, every weakness you think you've identified, every tactical advantage you believe you possess, it's all been carefully orchestrated to lure you into exactly this situation." Chen pulled up another display, this one showing the deployment of human fleets throughout known space. Most of it was fiction, generated by the command center's computers, but it looked convincing enough. "You see, Admiral, the Zephyrian Empire has a fundamental flaw in its strategic thinking. You believe that superior technology and numbers guarantee victory. You've become so accustomed to fighting inferior opponents that you've forgotten how to fight equals." "Humans are not our equals," Kethvar said. But there was less certainty in his voice than before, "aren't we? Your fleet just lost 47 ships to 17 human vessels that should have been completely outmatched. Your intelligence services have been feeding you false information for 2 decades without realizing it. Your tactical doctrine assumes enemies who fight rationally, who value their own lives above their objectives." Chen stepped closer to the display, meeting Kethvar's alien gaze directly. "Admiral, I need to tell you something about humans that your analysts missed. We are very, very good at pretending to be something we're not. We've been pretending to be weak, scattered, primitive. But the truth is that we've been preparing for this war since before your empire knew we existed." She activated another display, this one showing what appeared to be massive human fleets positioned throughout the galaxy. The images were mostly fabricated, composites of real ships mixed with computer-generated vessels, but they looked authentic enough to sell the deception. "Every human world has installations like these," Chen continued, gesturing to the underground complex around her. "Every human system has been fortified and weaponized. Every human fleet has been equipped with technologies your empire has never encountered." The truth was much less dramatic. Humanity had exactly one fleet capable of challenging the Zephyrians, and it was currently scattered across a dozen systems, unable to respond to the invasion of New Geneva in time to matter. But Kethvar didn't need to know that. "What are you proposing?" the alien admiral asked. "I'm proposing that you withdraw your fleet and inform your superiors that humanity is not the easy conquest they believed. I'm proposing that you recommend a more diplomatic approach to human-Zephyrian relations." Chen paused, letting the implications sink in. "Because, Admiral, If you choose to continue this invasion, you won't just be fighting the defenses of New Geneva. You'll be declaring war on a species that has spent 20 years preparing to fight your empire, and I promise you, that war will not go the way your computer models predict. The transmission ended, leaving Chen alone with her deception. She had bought time, possibly hours, but eventually Kethavar would call her bluff. Eventually he would realize that much of what she had shown him was elaborate theater, designed to make humanity appear far more powerful than it actually was. But by then, it might not matter. Admiral, Dr. Reyes appeared at her side, tablet in hand. Project Damocles is ahead of schedule. We can bring it online in 4 hours instead of 6. Chen nodded, her mind already racing ahead to the next phase of her plan, Project Damocles. Admiral Kethavar stood in his private quarters aboard the Dominion's Edge, studying intelligence reports that painted an increasingly disturbing picture of human capabilities. 3 hours had passed since his last conversation with Admiral Chen, and his analysis teams had been working frantically to verify or disprove her claims. The results were troubling. His intelligence chief, Colonel Zekthar, entered the chamber with a data pad clutched in his primary arms. Admiral, the deep system scans are complete. We have confirmation of extensive human infrastructure throughout the New Geneva system. How extensive? Beyond anything in our previous estimates, sir. Asteroid mining operations, orbital shipyards, manufacturing complexes hidden within moon bases. The humans have been building a significant industrial capacity while maintaining the appearance of a minor colony world. Kethavar felt his certainty continuing to erode. What about the other systems? Have we been able to verify Chen's claims about 47 fortified human worlds? Partially, sir. Our deep space reconnaissance networks have been compromised. We're discovering that many of our intelligence reports about human systems contain significant gaps. Information that we believed was comprehensive now appears to have been deliberately limited. The Admiral turned to stare out at the human world spinning slowly below. Are you telling me that our intelligence services have been infiltrated? Not infiltrated, sir. Misdirected. The humans appear to have been feeding us false information through carefully managed sources. They've been showing us exactly what they wanted us to see while hiding their true capabilities. Kethavar's mandibles clicked in frustration. In 3 centuries of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered an enemy capable of such long-term strategic deception. Most species they faced were either too primitive to manage such operations or too honorable to consider them. Humans, it seemed, were neither. Sir, Colonel Zekthar continued, there's something else. We've been monitoring human communication networks throughout this system, and we're detecting transmissions to and from locations far beyond New Geneva. The humans are in contact with what appears to be a substantial fleet. How substantial? Unknown, sir. The transmissions are heavily encrypted, but the volume suggests coordination between multiple star systems. Admiral Chen may not have been bluffing about human military capabilities. Kethavar absorbed this information, weighing it against his mission parameters. The conquest of New Geneva was supposed to be a routine operation, a demonstration of Zephyrian power that would discourage other human worlds from resisting future expansion. Instead, it was becoming something far more complex. What are your recommendations, Colonel? Sir, I recommend we proceed with extreme caution. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that our previous intelligence assessments completely missed. They've also shown a willingness to sacrifice their own forces in ways that our tactical doctrine does not account for. Kethavar nodded slowly. The suicide attack by the human fleet had shaken him more than he cared to admit. Not because of the tactical damage it had inflicted, though that was significant, but because of what it revealed about human psychology. These beings fought with a disregard for their own survival that bordered on insanity. Admiral, his communications officer's voice crackled over the intercom. We're receiving priority transmissions from Imperial Command. Kethavar returned to the bridge, where his command staff was analyzing the incoming messages. The holographic display showed the seal of the Zephyrian High Command, indicating communications directly from the capital world. Put it through, he ordered. The image of Supreme Admiral Vexkorth materialized, her ancient features bearing the scars of 100 campaigns. She was a legend within the Empire, the architect of their expansion strategy, and her displeasure was something every subordinate feared. Admiral Kethavar, she said without preamble, Explain to me why a routine conquest operation has resulted in the loss of 47 warships. Kethavar straightened in his command throne. Supreme Admiral, the humans employed unconventional tactics that our intelligence assessments did not anticipate. They converted their own vessels into weapons of mass destruction. Suicide attacks are not unknown in warfare, Admiral. What concerns me are the reports we're receiving from our intelligence networks. Is it true that human capabilities have been significantly underestimated? It appears so, Supreme Admiral. The humans have been conducting an extensive deception operation, concealing their true industrial and military capacity, while presenting themselves as a minor threat. Vexkorth's expression darkened. Are you telling me that our intelligence services have been compromised for decades without our knowledge? That appears to be the case, Supreme Admiral. There was a long pause as the elderly commander absorbed this information. Admiral Kethavar, you are to suspend the conquest of New Geneva immediately. Do not engage human forces unless directly attacked. We need time to reassess the strategic situation. Supreme Admiral, with respect, my fleet still maintains overwhelming superiority. The human defenses, while more significant than anticipated, cannot prevent us from completing our mission. Admiral, Vexkorth's voice carried a warning that made Kethavar's blood chill. We have just learned that human diplomatic representatives have contacted several of our tributary species. They are offering military assistance to any world that wishes to resist Zephyrian expansion. The implications hit Kethavar like a physical blow. The Empire's expansion had been predicated on their ability to conquer worlds individually, preventing potential enemies from forming alliances that could challenge Zephyrian supremacy. If the humans were actively encouraging resistance, how many species have responded to these overtures? 17 so far, with more expected. The humans are not just offering assistance, they're sharing technology. Admiral, if we proceed with the conquest of New Geneva, we may find ourselves facing a galaxy-wide coalition armed with human weapons. Kethavar stared at the tactical display, watching human energy signatures pulse throughout the New Geneva system. What had seemed like a simple conquest operation was rapidly becoming something far more dangerous. The opening battle of a war that could reshape the galaxy. What are my orders, Supreme Admiral? You are to open negotiations with the human commander. Determine what they want, what they're willing to accept, and what they're prepared to fight for. The Empire needs to understand what we're dealing with before we commit to a course of action. The transmission ended, leaving Kethavar alone with a realization that chilled him to his core. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Zephyrian Empire was facing an enemy that might actually be capable of defeating them. Not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through something far more dangerous. The ability to turn the Empire's own expansion strategy against itself. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we're detecting new energy signatures from the planet's surface. Whatever the humans are building down there, they're bringing it online. Kethavar looked down at New Geneva, its surface unmarked by the bombardment he had expected to be conducting by now. Instead of a conquered world, he was looking at what might be humanity's greatest trap, a world that appeared vulnerable but was actually prepared to inflict devastating casualties on any force that tried to take it. Open a channel. To Admiral Chen, he ordered. It's time to find out what the humans really want. But even as he gave the order, Kethavar suspected he already knew the answer. The humans wanted exactly what they had always wanted, to be left alone to develop in their own way in their own time, without interference from galactic empires that saw them as obstacles to be removed. The problem was that they had become far too dangerous to ignore, and far too powerful to easily defeat. In the depths of Mount Meridian, Admiral Chen watched her tactical display as something unprecedented happened. A Zephyrian fleet was requesting negotiations. For 3 centuries, the Empire had expanded through conquest and subjugation, never once offering to talk before shooting. The fact that they were willing to negotiate now meant her deception was working better than she had dared hope. Ma'am, Lieutenant Colonel Morrison approached with a concerned expression, we're reading massive energy buildups throughout the Zephyrian fleet. They're powering weapon systems. Chen nodded calmly.
Standard practice for any military commander entering negotiations.
Admiral Kethavar wants to make sure we understand he still has the option of destroying us if talks fail. And do we have options if talks fail? Chen glanced toward the sealed chamber where Project Damocles hummed with barely contained power. We have exactly one option, Colonel. Let's hope we don't need to use it. The communication request from the Zephyrian flagship appeared on her screen, and Chen accepted it immediately. Admiral Kethavar's alien features materialized in the holographic display, but now she could see uncertainty in his posture that hadn't been there before. Admiral Chen, he began formally, I have been authorized by Zephyrian High Command to discuss terms for the withdrawal of your forces and the peaceful integration of New Geneva into the Empire. Chen almost laughed. Even now, facing an enemy that had already cost him 47 ships, Kethavar was still thinking in terms of conquest. The Zephyrian Empire truly couldn't conceive of any outcome other than their own victory. Admiral Kethavar, she replied, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not interested in discussing the surrender of New Geneva. I'm here to offer you terms for the complete withdrawal of Zephyrian forces from human space. The alien commander's mandibles clicked in what Chen had learned was a sign of agitation. Admiral, you cannot seriously believe that a single world can dictate terms to the Zephyrian Empire. I'm not a single world, Admiral. I'm a representative of humanity, and humanity has something your empire desperately needs. And what might that be? Chen activated a new display, showing star charts that covered thousands of light years. Red zones marked Zephyrian territory, blue indicated human space, and yellow showed the locations of species that had recently contacted human diplomatic representatives. Allies, she said simply. Your empire has spent 3 centuries making enemies, Admiral. Every world you've conquered, every species you've subjugated, every independent system you've absorbed, they all remember what you took from them. And now they have an alternative. Kethavar studied the display, his expression growing more troubled as he absorbed the implications. You're claiming that you can organize resistance throughout the galaxy? I'm not claiming it, Admiral. I'm doing it. At this moment, human advisors are meeting with resistance leaders on 43 worlds throughout your empire. We're sharing technology, providing training, and coordinating strategy. Your 3-century expansion is about to face its first serious challenge. The truth was more limited than Chen's confident words suggested. Humanity had managed to establish contact with 17 species willing to consider resistance, and actual military assistance was being provided to only 5. But the psychological impact of even that limited cooperation was already visible in Kethavar's reaction. What do you want? The Zephyrian admiral asked bluntly. Complete withdrawal of all Zephyrian forces from systems claimed by humanity or our allies. Recognition of human territorial sovereignty. Establishment of formal diplomatic relations between our species. Chen paused, watching Kethavar's reaction. And compensation for the damage your forces have already inflicted on human worlds. Impossible. The Empire does not negotiate with inferior species. Then the Empire is about to learn a very expensive lesson about exactly how inferior humanity really is. Chen activated another display. This one showing what appeared to be massive human fleets moving through hyperspace towards Zephyrian territory. The images were mostly fabricated, composites of real ships mixed with computer-generated vessels, but they looked convincing enough to sell the deception. Admiral, she continued, while we've been talking, human fleets have been moving into position throughout your empire. In 6 hours, simultaneous attacks will begin on 17 Zephyrian military installations. Each attack will be carried out by forces equipped with the same technology that just cost you 47 ships. Kethavar leaned forward in his command throne. You're bluffing. Am I? Your own intelligence services have been compromised for 20 years. Your tactical doctrine assumes enemies who fight rationally. Your expansion strategy depends on conquering worlds individually, before they can organize effective resistance. Chen smiled coldly. Admiral, everything your empire believes about warfare is about to be proven wrong. The Zephyrian commander was quiet for several minutes, clearly communicating with his superiors through private channels. Chen used the time to check on Project Damocles, which was now ready for activation if negotiations failed. She desperately hoped it wouldn't come to that. Admiral Chen, Kethavar said finally, even if your claims about human capabilities are accurate, you cannot seriously expect the Empire to abandon 3 centuries of expansion based on threats from a species we encountered less than 50 years ago. I don't expect you to abandon anything, Admiral. I expect you to adapt. The galaxy is changing, whether your empire acknowledges it or not. The age of easy conquest is over. Species are becoming more advanced, more connected, more willing to fight for their independence. Chen gestured to the star charts surrounding them. Humanity is offering your empire something unprecedented, the chance to transform from conquerors to partners, trade instead of tribute, cooperation instead of subjugation, allies instead of slaves. And if we refuse, then you'll face exactly what every empire in history has faced when it grew too large and made too many enemies. Chen's expression hardened. Collapse. The word hung in the air between them, carrying implications that both commanders understood. The Zephyrian Empire was vast, but it was also stretched thin, dependent on the cooperation of conquered species and the assumption that resistance was futile. If that assumption proved false, what guarantees can you offer? Kethvar asked. How do we know that humanity won't simply use any agreement as an opportunity to prepare for future aggression? The same guarantee your empire has always offered conquered worlds, Chen replied. Our word, backed by our demonstrated ability to enforce it. She activated one final display, this one showing the true scope of Project Damocles. Not the underground weapons installations that Kethvar had detected, but something far more ambitious. The display revealed a network of devices positioned throughout the New Geneva system, each one connected to others by quantum entanglement communication systems. Admiral, Chen said quietly, I need to show you something that will help you understand exactly what humanity is capable of when we're properly motivated. The display zoomed in on one of the devices, revealing its internal structure. Kethvar's expression changed as he realized what he was looking at. That's a quantum detonation device, he breathed. 17 of them, Chen confirmed. Each one capable of destabilizing local spacetime in a radius of approximately 1 light-year. Admiral, if your fleet attacks New Geneva, I won't just destroy your ships. I'll destroy this entire star system along with anything else unfortunate enough to be nearby. The implications were staggering. A weapon capable of destroying entire star systems would fundamentally alter the balance of power throughout the galaxy. No empire, no matter how vast, could survive if their enemies were willing to use such weapons. You're talking about mutual annihilation, Kethvar said. I'm talking about mutual respect, Chen corrected. Your empire has ruled through fear for 3 centuries. Now you know what it feels like to be afraid. The two commanders stared at each other across the void of space, each representing not just their fleets, but the future of their species. The decision made in the next few minutes would determine whether the galaxy moved toward cooperation or destruction. Admiral Kethvar, Chen said softly, humanity doesn't want to be your enemy. We never did. All we ever wanted was to be left alone to find our own path among the stars. But if we can't have peace, we'll settle for mutual assured destruction. The transmission ended, leaving both commanders alone with the weight of choices that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. 18 hours later, Admiral Kethvar stood once again before the viewport of his flagship, but now he watched the Zephyrian fleet executing a withdrawal pattern that would have been unthinkable just days before. One by one, his remaining ships were jumping to hyperspace, leaving New Geneva's orbital space empty for the first time since the invasion began. The communication from Supreme Admiral Vexkorth had been brief and to the point. Accept the human terms. Begin immediate withdrawal. Report to High Command for debriefing. It was, without question, the most humiliating moment in 3 centuries of Zephyrian expansion. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, the last of our ships has cleared the gravity well. We're ready to jump to hyperspace on your command. Kethvar nodded but didn't immediately give the order. Instead, he activated one final communication channel to the planet below. Admiral Chen appeared on his display, looking considerably more relaxed than she had during their previous conversations. Behind her, Kethvar could see human technicians beginning to power down the massive weapons installations that had held his fleet at bay. Admiral Kethvar, Chen said, I understand your fleet is departing. Indeed. The Empire has accepted your proposal for formal diplomatic relations. Ambassadors will be dispatched to establish proper communication channels between our species. I'm glad to hear it. And, Admiral, I want you to know that humanity holds no animosity toward the Zephyrian people. We understand that you were following orders, doing your duty as you saw it. Kethvar felt something that might have been relief, though he wouldn't have admitted it. Admiral Chen, I must ask, was any of it real? The fleets, the weapons, the coordinated resistance throughout the galaxy. Chen smiled, and for the first time, Kethavar saw genuine warmth in her expression. Some of it was real, Admiral. More of it was becoming real even as we spoke, and all of it was possible given time and motivation. The quantum weapons? Oh, those are very real. Humanity doesn't bluff about existential threats, Admiral. We've learned that the universe is a dangerous place, and sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be prepared for war. Kethavar considered this, thinking about the implications for future Zephyrian expansion and the other species. The resistance movements? Growing stronger every day. Your empire spent centuries creating enemies, Admiral. Humanity just gave them hope that resistance was possible. The alien commander was quiet for a moment, processing the full scope of what had occurred. A single human world had not just defeated a Zephyrian invasion, it had fundamentally altered the strategic balance of power throughout the galaxy. Admiral Chen, he said finally, what happens now? Now we learn to coexist. Humanity has no interest in conquering the Zephyrian Empire, Admiral. We're not interested in ruling other species or imposing our values on unwilling subjects, but we are committed to defending ourselves and our allies. Chen gestured to something off camera, and the display shifted to show New Geneva's surface. Where before there had been small agricultural settlements, now Kethavar could see the beginnings of massive construction projects. Shipyards, industrial complexes, research facilities, the infrastructure of a species preparing for its emergence as a galactic power. The age of easy conquest is over, Chen continued, but the age of cooperation is just beginning. Your empire can be part of that future, Admiral, or it can cling to the past and face the consequences. And if the empire chooses to continue its expansion elsewhere, there are thousands of worlds that have no connection to humanity. Chen's expression hardened slightly. Every species deserves the right to determine its own fate, Admiral. Humanity will not stand by and watch the strong prey upon the weak, regardless of whether we have formal alliances in place. The implications were clear. Humanity had appointed itself the galaxy's protector, ready to intervene wherever the Zephyrian Empire, or any other aggressive power, threatened peaceful worlds. You're claiming a moral authority that spans the entire galaxy, Kethavar observed. No, Admiral, we're accepting a responsibility that comes with power. For too long, the galaxy has been ruled by the principle that might makes right. Humanity offers a different path. Kethavar thought about this as he prepared to give the order for his fleet's final departure. In his centuries of service, he had seen the Zephyrian Empire grow from a single world to a galactic superpower through the simple expedient of being stronger than their enemies. Now they faced an enemy that was not just strong but willing to sacrifice everything to protect what they believed in. Admiral Chen, he said, I have one final question. The officers who died in the suicide attack, Captain Rodriguez and the others, did they volunteer for that mission knowing they wouldn't survive? They did. Why? Chen was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. Because sometimes, Admiral, the only way to protect what you love is to be willing to lose everything for it. Those officers didn't die because they hated your empire. They died because they loved their families, their world, their species more than they loved their own lives. She looked directly at Kethavar, her eyes reflecting depths of emotion that his species struggled to understand. That's what you're really facing, Admiral. Not superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but a species that loves so fiercely that will become monsters to protect what matters to us. The transmission ended, leaving Kethavar alone with thoughts that would haunt him for the rest of his career. He had faced the humans expecting to find a weak, primitive species ripe for conquest. Instead, he had discovered something far more dangerous. A species that fought not for territory or resources, but for principles they considered worth dying for. Admiral, his navigation officer called out, we're ready for the jump to hyperspace. Execute, Kethavar commanded. The stars elongated and vanished as the Dominion's Edge entered hyperspace, carrying the last Zephyrian ship away from New Geneva. Behind them, they left a world that had fundamentally altered the course of galactic history. On New Geneva's surface, Admiral Chen watched the alien fleet disappear from her sensors before turning to address her command staff. Colonel Morrison, begin transmitting our after-action report to Earth Command. Dr. Reyes, start the disarmament procedures for Project Damocles. We won't need those weapons anymore. Are you certain of that, ma'am? Morrison asked. Chen looked up at the stars visible through the command center's main viewport. thinking about the future that humanity was now committed to building. No, Colonel, but I'm hopeful. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Zephyrian Empire has encountered something they couldn't conquer. That changes everything. She turned back to her staff, already planning the massive effort that would be required to transform humanity from a collection of scattered colonies into a power capable of enforcing galactic peace. Gentlemen, we've just fired the first shot in a war that we hope never to fight. Now comes the hard part, building a galaxy where that war will never be necessary. Outside, New Geneva's twin moons rose over a world that had proven something the galaxy had thought impossible: that even the mightiest empire could be stopped by a species unwilling to accept defeat. The age of human expansion had begun.